Hello, hello. Welcome back to everyone who actually does follow me. Again, Christian here, Open Source Office. I thought I'd give a little teaser as to what's coming in Q3. At least over the next week, we'll be finalizing the service catalog pipeline and things associated to it. Kind of wanted to do a quick overview of that, so there's a good explainer video to that piece because people probably heard me talk many times. Project support services, what does the open office do, or open source office? And I thought this would be a good little teaser to that initiative. Um, so I've actually been working on this probably since Q2, early Q2, like March or so. Because as you look at other open source foundations like Apache, well, Apache does less, but still coordinates it, or CNCF, Linux Foundation, and Hyperledger, they actually do some support services for projects, project incubation, and things related to that. This is a subset of our incubation, which I'll explain in a video shortly after this. But this is what the open source office brings to Intersect and why we're here. Um, so related to that, when you hear the word project support office, what does it really mean? It means that we, as the open source office, are actually dedicated to helping our open source projects, not just specifically for Intersect, but the Cardano community as a whole. And we're wanting to provide services that stand ready to basically support projects within the Cardano community. And this can range from a range of multiple services. And we want to establish ourselves as a beacon of support, open source adoption, and subject matter experts to that, and kind of be a catalyst for those projects. Because a lot of the original idea for it was, especially with the project incubation piece, was you have Catalyst, which funds a lot of ideas to get to their MVP, but a lot of those projects, their future roadmap or where they go next, I wanted Intersect to kind of be a bridge for that purpose. You've gotten your MVP, you know what your project is, but you don't know how to turn it either into in the open source library you want to with feature enrichment, open source best practice, or you have product that you want to build and turn that into a commercial adoption platform. So this, I wanted to serve as that central hub of bringing together all the resources that are in the Cardano community and have a supplier list, and then things that we offer directly. So that's kind of what a project support service is. Um, so for the open source office piece, I haven't delved too much into this, but I can actually give a brief overview of that, which is down here. Most of the time you're curious, like, why an open source office? And the reason we stood up was because Cardano wasn't efficiently open source. So we put together an open source strategy with the open source committee, which is in that State of the Union YouTube video. But we were given the GovTool and Core Cardano repo list from IOHK, and we're focused on enriching those projects. But I wanted to expand beyond that and actually bring us more into a traditional function, which is we have multiple responsibilities. And if you go look at open source program office models, which are more IP centric companies, they kind of become a central point for driving the development of all the technical projects associated with that. And given that we still had the complexity of the Cardano code base and the need for open source adoption, I brought that IP centric focus to Intersect, but remove the IP centric piece to it. So we became a culmination to help enrich our open source practice and projects, make sure that there's support done with that, but also connecting it to the membership umbrella and the community as a whole. So we are operating an OSPO, but in an MBO environment, which is a new kind of focus towards MBOs in general. And we also established a committee, which is the representation of the community, helping us drive the policy and strategy related to that. So some of the things that we need to do is ensuring compliance with open source licenses, be that go-to, and addressing any license violations, also conducting that legal support for projects, maintaining an inventory of our open source software used within Intersect, as well as keeping in line with policies related to governance, security, and project incubation framework, which is our new ones. And then contributing back to the open source community via code contributions, bug fixes, other forms of engagement, helping community adoption, and educating members in general on open source, its benefits, providing guidance and development teams, and connecting the community together, as well as being that onboard ramp for new people in the community. Um, Typically, when you look at an open source program office, there's 5 key pillars that kind of get addressed. You have the OSPO manager, which would be myself. You got a program manager, which is our buddy Tex that everybody knows. A community manager, which we have abs filling in for. Um, and the program manager basically sees the overall day-to-day operations of the open source office. The community manager is self-explanatory, engage with the community. And then you usually have a technology evangelist or technical evangelist, which it goes to all promotes and sells the project and commercial adoption within technical communities. And then you have our legal counsel, which I'm working on, but they're the legal experts related to open source licensing issues. And then developer advocates, which if you've seen that video, we have 3 coming on here by the end of this month. But these 5 key functions typically are what fills an open source office. I would say we're fully staffed right now with just the legal counsel bit to be fully fleshed out. But my strategy for the open source office, at least to the end of the year right now, is we do have myself, Tex, and Abs fulfilling those first 3 key roles. The developer advocates coming in to fill that last one right there. And then as we go to events and conferences, I'm tying in people as we have sponsorship opportunities to do so, to sell their tech and our projects as a whole to these different conferences and the technical evangelist piece. And then we'll be bringing in legal counsel towards the end of the year to make this a fully functional picture. But instead of just these detailed definitions, here's just the quick architecture for it. Everything in the box we have in place. We're a fully functioning department at this point in time. And then the other 2 are consulted resources as we need them. And if you're curious about how the open source office works, essentially this ties into what our support services are going to be. But the beginning of this workflow is with all our stakeholders on the left, who are also our clients and our suppliers. We'll get your inputs, i.e. anything that you need, whether it be requests, FAQs, escalations, education needs, policy, project support, standards, specifications that we need to be put together. Anything that comes from the committee as well is going to go into our backlog. Tex will be the one who massages that and formulates it. I'll consult with him to determine our priority and our output. And then we do a go, no go, whether we have sufficient information to actually do the outputs and or we need to actually bring it back full circle for more input. But our outputs will range anything from new policies, standards, contracts for support, like the maintainer type stuff in conjunction with the TSC, recommendation decisions, and then services to be rendered and basic repo management. That's kind of what we are as a whole. And leading back up to that, it goes into our OSO services intro. So we're going to base, now that you have an understanding of what the open source office is, we're trying to build how can we be best beneficial to the community and not just justify our existence, but actually make an impact and take forward more of what Intersect's doing, but make open source matter and our projects matter and sustain the ecosystem. And so I started building a list from the Builders Fest in April in Toulouse. Met with a lot of y'all, so hi, if I did meet with you. Y'all's feedback helped feed into this. And then I did some closed focus groups with several people in the community to review the list. And this is kind of what we comprised high level. I'll be doing internal pipelines for how we service these. But my idea for this is like if you're walking into the open source office restaurant, we'll give you a menu and you tell us what you need and we'll fill those requests and build a backlog. And as we build that demand, we'll be working out the supply to get it done. But those key areas that came back were marketing, which why else would you have an MBO if it's not to help market and promote and hold events for projects and make people aware of it? Community building. I mean, this is a central point for actually getting developers towards open source contribution, committing back to you, and then helping you make an impact in the community altogether. Legal, which is going through different aspects of stuff related to open source or even regulation type things when it comes to product adoption, etc. Our big one's definitely going to be open source strategy and sustainability, helping projects come in under the Intersect umbrella and build out business models, tie them into fundability, working out strategic partnerships with suppliers lists, technical writing, and coordinating external contributions. That's going to be one of our big pillars to drive in this year. And then governance, essentially, helping set up in conjunction with our governance policy. One second. I know I'm recording myself. That's going to kick me out of the call. Of course, always embarrassing me. But going back to it, the governance piece, we have a governance policy in place, but we'll help each project establish their governance policy to line back up with the technical steering committee to help coordinate any issues that they have, make sure that there's a community being built that's sustainable, preventing any corporate dominance. This is decentralized, and then helping with community handbook templates. Community product management actually is something we are going to be helping with. This is connecting more with the roadmap, budget, and technical steering committee. Open source is just a caveat to help coordinate that and help advise on how to get these things going, which is making sure that there's the product working groups or technical working groups that you can join in, set up, get community created and support features, tie that into the roadmap and get funding to help build those out. And then submitting to the parent communities how your project ties into the bigger picture and make sure that there is that community aspect at the heart of it. And then design, this has a wide definition, but helping with either graphic design, plugging in the community to help with design, helping get graphics, going back to marketing, stuff like that. And then obviously training. Open source is a very broad topic. It's an ethos, lifeblood, but you also have the technical side of it, which is how do you run a node, different things. So we'll be doing education product bootcamp stuff on the side as well. That's kind of a high level overview of our project support services. We also are, these are key minimum services that we do. Everything over here specifically for open source projects, and then we as an open source office are going to set this across the board, which are the project standards, i.e. if you have a repo, you have to have so much documentation. We'll be working to build a contribution ladder where there's a trainings and certification available to that. Basic legal services, still TBD, and then open source tools that are available to everyone. One that we will be offering is Bitergia, open source software analytic tool. There'll be more coming on that in Q3, and then technical documentation, how we can help get projects and stuff up like that. One of the other stuff that we have is one that I'm excited about is helping with security audit guidance, certification, and standards. We do have a partnership going with the Plutus High Assurance team to help build an open source library for things like that, but also different ways you can not just tie in security standards, but a way to score yourself too. I'm working with other foundations to figure out how they do that and how we can do that very effectively here, just so you can tell how secure your project is, make sure that there's no problems. We're already doing the bi-weekly check-in, and then with Intersect staff as requested, those open source office hours, just connect with us if you need it. We will have the project activity tracking with Bitergia. We do have our monthly reports that are going out every month. And then we do have code commit data services. More to come on that. And the other piece that I can kind of, yeah, these slides, this is just breaking these down even further. So this is my standard provided thing that all repos must have, which is having an informative README and about, a description of the repo, a contributing MD, our standard code of conduct, license MD, which is typically Apache 2 or MIT, and then a code owners file, which identifies the core maintainers. And then we recommend to include a pull request template issue template. We also are going to be working to do different training and certification. This slide's TBD. We do have some basic courses that are coming out. The Intersect's partnered with education people. And then we have the decentralized education working group that we're going to get in touch with to help with this. The other piece we do have, I'm trying to find a specific slide. Oh, project, this is the incubation. So I don't think yeah, I'll actually break this into another video, but the idea behind the project incubation actually came from the Cloud Native Computing Foundation about how they do things. And this is based off their example where they do an incubating graduate in the sandbox. And the idea of this is that it allows projects that are not very mature in their practice, or they just got that MVP from Catalyst, quote unquote. Um, Not that they have to be explicitly from Catalyst. It's just a good example. But those projects now need a place to call home. They've met their milestones. They got the proper MVP funding. Now they need a place to grow and mature. And we're opening that door at Intersect here in Q3 to allow those projects to be fostered under. There'll be a submission process and review before Intersect brings it on board, just to make sure it's in line with TSC, OSC, or any of the governing board expectations for our projects. But it allows the door to be open so that we can actually find what key projects are in the ecosystem that need that sustainability and funding and governance, and basically security and sustainability, most importantly, to make sure that there's never a log4j issue, as people may have been aware of in the past, where you have an entire tech stack built on a project that's not being maintained, then it gets hacked and the whole tech stack falls. So we want to be sure that those projects can have a home, and that I'm working this to eventually, my idea eventually is get to a paid open source model to ensure sustainability across the board. And so this is the little stepping stones to get there eventually. But the idea for it is you come in as a sandbox, which is an idea to get fostered. As you go through more adoption, you can enter the early or graduated level, which is where you start getting more investment from Intersect and more connections towards your project to get adoption once you leave the sandbox phase. The sandbox is more proof of concept type projects or MVP growing. And then once you reach a certain level of adoption and have somewhat of a community base, you get into the graduated. And then or not graduated, you get into the incubating phase. Um, and as you start to incubate more and then you reach a certain level of standards, you get into the graduated, which is you are a highly promoted, fully fledged project that we are promoting. And yeah, we have our own thing, but I'll get into that on the videos subsequent to this. But there's certain services that come with each thing. One example is just the graduation level. They get a press announcement, presentation slot at Cardano summits, etc. That's an example, or a pitched idea before we actually finalized. But yeah, that's basically the project support services in a nutshell, and then a brief overview of the open source office. Exciting Q3 coming up. So if y'all have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Tex, or Abs. I'm including him as our open source community manager at this point. So, and more to come from the developer advocates. Yep. Thank y'all.